Okay. Okay. So today we're going to start on Mem Zion. Thank you. Mem Zion Amud Aleph. That's 47a. Starting with Boimini Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak Bar Abba. Yeah. Okay. Thank Hashem. We're able to learn Torah every day.
Oh man.
It's possible learning which have the basic Mikdash immediately.
Man.
It's Gemara is a little complex. There's a lot of opinions that are going back and forth over here. Let's see. What was that?
I read it last night, bro.
So it goes like this. It's a question from Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, Reb Bar Abba, a Talmud of Yeshua. Says, Kivsi Atzera Sheshachtan Lishman, V'Zarek Daman Shlei Lishman. Isi Alechem Al Ba'achila. The two lambs. We know that we're supposed to do the two lambs are supposed to come along with two loaves of bread. These two loaves of bread it's machlekes Rabbi Kiva and Bananas if which is ma'akiv, which one, right? If the bread is ma'akiv the lambs, or the lambs are ma'akiv the bread. However, everyone agrees that if they're there by the shechita, then it's considered zika and they're considered attached and they're ma'akiv each other. What happened here is that the shechita was done properly, and so therefore now the bread and the lambs are attached. The connection there. However, the zrika was done shaloi lishman. Zrika was done for a different animal, for a different sacrifice. So the question now is: are you able to eat the bread? Is the bread considered kodesh? Remember, they're attached already because the shechita was done when it was there, so they're attached. So the Gemara is asking now, Ali B'Daman, according to which opinion are you asking this question? Ali B'Der Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, better machlekes between Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon and Rebbe, if the zrika is the one that consecrates it, or if it's the shechita that consecrates the bread, right? Which one was the main part? Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon said it was the zrika, and Rebbe held that it was the shechita. So now, over here, according to Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, I didn't do a proper zrika. So we would say that the breads aren't holy, right? The zrika, the sprinkling of the blood, was done shalei lishman. So if you didn't do the proper zrika, so then the breads aren't holy. Yali b'der Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon zrika, he the mekadsha. So then, if the breads didn't become holy, that means you can't eat the breads. We learned in the beginning of Maseches Menachos Daf that there's only two sacrifices that if you do that are done shalei lishman that are pasul. That's a chatas and a pesach. This is not a chatas and it's not a pesach. Therefore, we said that the sacrifice is eligible. The only thing is, the owner needs to bring another sacrifice. Remember that's what we learned in the beginning of Zvachim and then again in Menachos. So here we just did shalei lishman. It's no problem. It's sacrifice is still edible, right? You can eat it. The only thing is that it didn't satisfy the obligation of the vow or whatever. So here we are with a community sacrifice, shlamim, shalmi tzibah, right? That are done shalei lishman. The zrika is shalei lishman. The question is just about the bread. The animal's fine. It's about the bread. So if we follow Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon, he holds that what's matir the bread, what consecrates the bread that then makes it that it's allowed to now get eaten is the zrika. So you didn't do a proper zrika here because it was shalei lishman. So now the bread is still stuck. It is stuck. It can't be eaten. So that's not what Rav Shimon Bar Yitzchak is asking. Yeah, leave it to Rebbe. Maybe it's according to Rebbe. Rebbe says the shchita is mekadosh, right? So then it should be good. The shchita. Problem is that we had a machlekes, Abaye and Rava, what Rebbe meant when he said kaddish ve'ena kaddish. He says that it becomes consecrated, but it's not fully. Abaye said that it meant kaddish ve'ena gomer, and Rava said kaddish ve'ena nitter. Right? We said the difference would be if you would try to redeem it, would it get redeemed or not? Whatever the case is, it's not fully permitted according to Abaye and according to Rava. It's not fully permitted until the zrika. So, what is Reb Shimon Bar Yitzchak's question about the loaves of bread? Both opinions, Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon and Rebbe, would both say that until you have the zrika, it shouldn't be eaten. Ella Liba Dahaitan, it must be following another Tana that we didn't mention yet. Yeah, that's what Reb Shimon Bar Yitzchak's question is. The Tani Avud Reb Yirmiyah Barabba, Reb Yirmiyah Barabba's father, he taught the following brisa. The Shtei Alechem Sheyatzu in Shchita Lizrika. We're missing a detail in this brisa, which is going to be very, very significant in a moment. But what happened over here is that the animal was shechted, and the two loaves of bread are there. That means that there's an attachment between the animals and the loaves of bread, right?
Yes. Then in the notes, it said that the third time was
No, there's the father of Rabbi Yirmiyah. That's quoting a brisa, right? Oh, maybe he wasn't so popular, so famous. He's known by his son. Yeah, so he's teaching this brisa. Brisa says that you have the two animals and the two loaves of bread. The shechita was done. Problem is that the two loaves of bread left the temple courtyard. Now it created a problem called psul yotzei. Yotzei, if an animal leaves the area that we're supposed to be, becomes pasul. Psul yotzei, it wasn't allowed to leave until after the sprinkling of the blood. Now, so what happened here is the zarak damen shel kvasim chutz lizmanan, and then we did a zrika. We sprinkled the blood, but the zrika wasn't a proper zrika. The zrika was a pigul zrika. So we have two problems with this. One is that the lechem left the area. Second problem is that the zrika was pigul. So here we have a machlekes between Rabbi Elazar and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Elazar, oh yeah, Rabbi Elazar Aimer ein belechem mishum pigul. Rabbi Elazar says that the bread is not pigul. Now we have two ways of looking at this. Why is the bread not pigul? Say, because it's puzzle already. It left. Once it's puzzle, it doesn't become pigul. Easy, right? So the only thing is that there's two options in how to view this. You could say that we're gonna have two approaches in the Gemara. One approach is that the bread is still outside. The shechita, we could say, if the bread is still outside, then we'll just say that the zrika doesn't work for something that's outside. That's what we could say. Another option is we could say that it's just puzzle. The zrika does work. It's not the problem in the zrika. It's just we have another problem over here. That once it's puzzle, then it's puzzle. Do we say that the zrika doesn't work? Do we say that the zrika works, but we have a problem of yaitse? Yeah, bringing the bread back in. Here's this. Do we say that? Do we say he's saying that it's not going to be pigel? The bread isn't pigel. Question is it because there was no zrika here? He did a zrika, but the zrika was done for items that weren't in the base of Mikdash. So the zrika was nothing. So the zrika that had thoughts of pigel is not even considered anything for this bread because the bread wasn't here. Or do we say that the bread was here? The zrika is valid, and like the bread should become permitted because the zrika worked for it. The only thing is that since there's a second sul on the bread, we learned that pigel only works when there's only one problem. Yeah. Do we say that there's no zrika, or do we say that there is a zrika? There's a second problem as well. Okay, so the Gemara is gonna switch, and the Gemara is gonna switch on us. We're gonna start off by saying that there's no zrika.
Only happens by those that the secret the one that stuff. Because if it was by the shita, like it would be a question.
Let's say the shchita is mater. Then we would say no, actually we are. It does go according. You'll see in a moment. It follows even that opinion that the shchita is mater. You'll see. So okay, so we got the first opinion so far. We have the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. That's Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanes. He says Ein belach mishum pigel. Rabbi Kiva says Yesh belach mishum pigel. That there is pigel here. Again, this is a case where there's two problems with the bread. One is that it left. One is that it's pigel. The question is, does it become actually pigel? Omer Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes says, Sheshes is a later. He's stepping in to explain the brisa. He says, Hani Tanoi Kirebi Svirlu. These two Tanoim, which is early Tanoim, Rabbi Lezer ben Horkanes, Rabbi Lezer, and Rabbi Akiva, they're following the opinion of Rabbi, which actually came later in time. But his opinion was the Amar Shchita Mekacha, that the Shchita consecrates the loaves. The Shchita of the two lambs consecrate the loaves of bread. Miyu, however, so what's going to be the machlekes? Rabbi Lezer follows his reasoning, which we're going to see in a moment in a brisa. Once something has left the temple, so the zrika doesn't work on it. And since the bread has left, so there was no zrika. And that's Rabbi Lezer says, okay, no, there's no zrika, then there's no pigel. And Rabbi Kiva says that the zrika does work for yaitse. And so even though it's left, but nevertheless, it's the zrika still works and it's still effective. And now we take a look at the zrika, and the zrika was pigel zrika. So therefore, the bread becomes pigel.
Amen.
Doesn't matter if all the bread was there and then taken out.
It seems that the bread's outside.
When they did it.
Yeah.
That makes it why it wouldn't work.
Right.
Glad to see you're on the men.
Sorry?
Glad to see that you're on the men.
On the men?
The men.
Yeah. The Tanan. Now we're just going to quote the brisa with our sources of the machlekes between Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva. I guess before we do that, I just need to point out the original question over here of Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak is: do we say that bread of the two shtei alechem, the shtei alechem, kivsei atzeret, that if the lambs were shechted shalei lishman, the lambs were shechted lishman, but the zrika was shalei lishman, do we say that the breads are able to be eaten? And I think the basis of this question is, do we view the breads as part of the animal, or do we view the breads independent? If they would be viewed as part of the animal, then we would say, well, the animal shalei l'shman is kosher, right? Maybe we should just take it along. Do we view the breads like another leg of the animal? You can eat the whole animal, so you can eat the breads. It's just part of it. Do we view the breads independently? What's happening now is that we're quoting this other opinion that we're trying to figure out according to which Tana is he asking this. Because if you follow the opinion of Rabbi Bar Shimon, and he says that you need a zrika, so you didn't have a good zrika here. If you follow Rabbi, he says, but you still need a good zrika, because Abai and Rabbi say you didn't have a good zrika. But if you say now we found a third opinion. This third opinion tells us that if the bread's left, and then there was, and then the blood was sprinkled shalei lishman. There was already a psul yaitze. Now our question is, do we consider the breads as part of the animal? So what we're saying now is that we have a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Eliezer says that we view Rabbi Eliezer says that it's ein balach mishum pigel. It's not pigel. Now, if we're going to follow this, and we're going to say that what's the reason why Rabbi Eliezer says ein balach mishum pigel, that there's no pigel here? If it's because really he holds that the bread and really holds that why is there no pickle? So we're saying that the zrika doesn't work for something that left. Yeah, that's what we're going to say. However, comes along Rabbi Akiva and says that the zrika does work for something that left. If we're going to say that, then we're going to be following the opinion of Rabbi, which we'll see in a moment. That we're going to follow the opinion of Rabbi that says that the shechita works for the shtei alechem, and so therefore what we would say now as well is that we could say that the shechita of the back in the question of Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, we're going to try to answer this. We're going to say that the shechita was effective, and we're going to view the shtei alechem as part of the animal, as we'll see. Let's take a look.
Then the animal will be fit. The bread's not fit.
If the animal is fit, then the breads will be fit.
Yeah, but
No. The question is we're asking the breads become mutter just like the animal becomes mutter.
for the ones that say the bread is kosher.
No one says, who says the bread's from pasal? No, this is in Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak's case. He only has a question. He didn't have an answer. This is his question. It's talking about where the zrika was shalei lishma. We have other cases here. We have with zrika chutz lishmanai, but there was already a psul yaitze. It was another issue here. So the Tanan, let's say the machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva. Tanan, it says a muri kachim kalam sheyatzu lefnei zrika stamim. You have the limbs of a kachim kalam animal. And the interesting thing about kachim kalam animal is that they only become the rules of me'ila only apply to it. That having personal benefit only applies after the zrika, because kachim kalam really belongs to the owner. So after the zrika, there's me'ila on the emurim, on the parts of the animal that need to be put on the altar. That's where there's me'ila. Before that, there's no me'ila. So emuri kachim kalam sheyatzu lefnei zrika stamim. The limbs of this kachim kalam animal left the temple area before the blood was sprinkled, and then the blood got sprinkled. Okay, but it already left. So Rabbi Eliezer Eimer ein ma'ila. Rabbi Eliezer says that there's no me'ila because the zrika didn't work. When does the me'ila take effect? That's only after the zrika, because then that's when you're allowed to put the limbs on the altar, and that's when the limbs become very holy. But because these organs have left the temple area, so the zrika doesn't work for them. So it remains in its previous status, which is that there's no me'ilah. And there's no pigel nicer and tummy on this. There's no pigel, there's no leftover. It was nothing. It's already puzzled from beforehand. Rabbi Kiva says the opposite. He says ma'ilim behem, and he says it is effective when it's outside the temple. Okay, so now the Gemara explains my. Let's go back to, we're following Rabbi Akiva now, that the zrika does work when it's outside the temple. Now we're going to say, what's the question of Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak? Mida zrikas pigol kaval alechem bepigol b'yaitzi kabasar. The zrika of pigol makes the bread pigol as well, just like the flesh became pigol. Where did we say that? He said, Yesh belechem mishum pigol. That's what Rabbi Akiva holds. When the bread left the temple, and the blood got sprinkled with thoughts of pigol, we say that the bread becomes pigol. How does the bread become pigol? Because the bread is considered like part of the animal. The animal's pigol, the bread's pigol. So if that's the case, so we should say as well that zrika shlei lishma nami shaya leila lechem. If the bread and animal are considered one unit, when it comes to pigol, they should also be one unit when it comes to allowing them to be eaten. If the blood was sprinkled shlei lishman for a different sacrifice, just like the animal was eligible, so was this. Or maybe we should say that l'chumra amrinan. When do we say the bread is pigol because we're being strict? L'kula lay amrinan. Maybe we don't say that the bread becomes eligible to be eaten. Maybe we were just trying to put on it all of the restrictions, but that didn't mean that we had an absolute answer that it's going to be the bread is going to be just like the animal. Okay. So far, that's our explanation for Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak's question.
Because the laws of big or social group. Like it's considered big or.
Yeah, so that's what he's asking. Do we say that since it's pigol, the laws of pigol are strict, so that must mean that it's really connected? On the other hand, we're saying, no, the laws of pigol are strict, so we want it to be strict about it, but we're not going to be lenient about it to say that you're allowed to eat the bread in a different case, right? Maybe it's only because of the laws of pigol are strict. Maybe not. Maybe because that's the way we view it, right? Okay. That was the easy part. Now, Maskefla Rav Papa. Rav Papa has a question on Rav Sheshes. He explained that this whole that the way that we explained the shtei alechem that left, and then the blood was sprinkled with dots of pigel, we were explaining it that it's dependent on the machlaikas between. There's a machlaikas Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Akiva.
You're right, whenever fraudulent stuff. God's time from the visual gift.
So
I got the will in the home.
So we explain that it's based on that's Rabbi Lezer l'shitase and Rabbi Akiva l'shitase, the way they view Zrika for something that left. However, Rav Papa is not convinced. Rav Papa says, "Mimai dechiyisnu avroi pligi." How do you know that the machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva was talking about where the shtei alechem were taken out of the temple courtyard, and they're still outside. They're still outside the temple courtyard. I'm on top of 47b. They're still outside the temple courtyard. And the question was, do we say that Zrika is effective on something that's not inside? Maybe everyone would agree that if the two breads are outside, everyone would agree the Ein Zrika Mayelas L'Yotze, that it's not going to work. Now, I'm not sure how you're going to explain the Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva about the Imuri Kachim Kalim. Over there, that was very clear that there is a Machlekes Rabbi Eliezer. What we're saying now is that in this Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva that we have a Machlekes about where the bread's left and then the blood was sprinkled Shalei Lishman, and the blood was sprinkled for not Lishman, Chutz Lizman outside of the allotted time. So maybe in that case, maybe you don't have to explain it that the Machlekes is, does Rika work for something outside? Really, you can explain it that if it was still outside, everyone would agree that it wouldn't be valid. However, the Machlekes over here is Bahadar Eilinu Pligi. We're talking about where it came back inside. Rabbi Eliezer Savala Kerebi. Rabbi Eliezer is going to follow Rabbi Damar Shchita Mekacha. Bifsalu B'Yaitze. When does the bread become Kaddish to the extent that it's not allowed to leave the courtyard? Maybe the pshat over here is like this, that Rabbi Eliezer holds that, like Rabbi, that the bread becomes Kaddish by the time of the Shechita. After the Shechita, it leaves the courtyard, that's a problem, and then when it comes back in, it's already puzzle. And for Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon. And Rabbi Kiva maybe holds like Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon. Said there was never a problem for the bread to be leaving the courtyard because the bread was never consecrated to the extent that it can't leave the courtyard, because according to Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon, it's only after the sprinkling of the blood that it can't. So therefore, why does Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon say that there's pigul here? Because it was allowed to leave the courtyard. It wasn't holy yet. The machlekes Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon, the machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer is that Rabbi Akiva would follow Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon. I wish it was the other way. It was just for the names. But Rabbi Eliezer follows Rabbi, and Rabbi Akiva follows Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon. And if that's the case, then we're not dealing with anymore. Is the animal? Are the breads considered part of the animal to become pasul as with the pigul of the? We're not dealing anymore with that. We're dealing with, was it consecrated yet? If that's the case, then we don't have any source for who would be the author of, who would be the opinion that Reb Shmuel Bar Yitzchak is asking a question according to. Before we were saying that the whole issue was, is the animal and the bread attached? The bread was outside, the animal's inside, but we still consider it a limb. We say that it's still attached, that it becomes pigul. And that would explain that if the animal was permitted to eat, in the other case of Shmuel Bar Yitzchak, so then the bread would also be permitted to be eaten. But over here, it has nothing to do with the animal, the bread being as if like another limb of the animal.
I have a question.
Where it says, "Hi, Mike."
Hi. Many Daf and back, we talked at the fact that Zrika was the matir for the whole kashrus.
Yeah, exactly.
And all of a sudden, it's not being mentioned like that.
It is actually.
No.
According to Rabbi Eliezer Bar Shimon, the Zrika's matir. But the Zrika's matir, the animal. Question is, here we have bread.
So with matir the animal, but it's not matir the bread, he's saying?
Yeah, according to Rebbe, there's an aspect of the shechita that does something for the bread that takes place before the zrika. The shechita itself has some sanctification of the bread. Yeah. Now the truth is that even according to Rebbe, you still need the zrika to be fully matir. Because Abai and Rava have an argument about this, but both ultimately be fully matir. You need the zrika.
But if, according to the opinion that the bread is similar to a limb of the
right.
The animal, and which one of the two went out of the base of mikdash? Momentarily, the bread.
The bread.
That's where I'm going, and then comes back in. Why can we learn from Ben Bakua that guess what? It didn't need that matir part of it because the mother got shechted anyway. It's Yotzi and everything.
Okay, Rabbi Naftali is not here to put it in the sefer.
You got him in. It's a wild question. No,
okay.
Maybe he has no basis.
Your enthusiasm was nice.
Part of it.
Now I'm getting hungry
Okay.
for that Danish. It's just, I don't know who it belongs to.
No, it's yours. It says two
No,
dots
who
time.
did it belong
No,
to?
it says two dots
No,
time.
was it yours and you decide you don't want to eat it?
The Gemara says, "Hi, Mai." It says that we have to say. The Gemara say, one second. We have to go back and explain it the way we explained it. That the machlekes is dependent on if zrika helps for something that's outside the temple. If we would say that Rabbi Akiva holds, like Rabbi, over here we were saying Rabbi Akiva doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, who says that the shechita doesn't do anything, and that's why the shechita doesn't do anything for the bread, and that's why the bread was allowed to leave, and that's why the pigul takes effect. But now the Gemara is challenging that. It says, no, you can't do that. You have to say that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi. I know the Kamar. That's why Rabbi Akiva says, I know the Kamar Rabbi Akiva, the Kachilu b'shchita. Bas Yizrika kavala b'pigel. So if the shchita was effective, okay. So now the shchita made it kaddish, and now the pigel comes along and makes it into now the zrika that comes along and makes it pigel. So I had it consecrated, and now I have the pigel. But if I don't do that, if I say that there was no shechita here that was effective on the bread, because Rabbi Akiva is going to learn like Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, the shechita doesn't affect the bread according to Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon. It was only according to Rabbi. And if I say, so now what are we going to say? That when does the bread become attached? When do we say that the bread becomes kaddish? Only by the zrika. At the moment of the zrika, it's also becoming pigel, because the zrika was pigel. So take a look at this. He says, but if Rabbi Akiva holds like Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, the Mezvichale Mekadsha, who says that the shechita itself doesn't consecrate. Zrika is pigel mi Mekadsha, so the zrika of pigel, would that consecrate it? Rav Gidl says in the name of Rav, Zrikas pigel eina mevia lidei meila, eina metzia midei meila. That the zrika of pigel is not effective. Because on Kachim Kalim, we said that the zrika is what makes the organs under the category of me'ila. By the lesser holy animals, the zrika, the sprinkling, makes it that now the organs are now eligible to go on the altar, which means that they've raised the status of holiness of them, which means that you can't now have personal benefit, and if you do, you violate the laws of me'ila. So we said that if that zrika was pigel, then the zrika itself is not effective enough to raise the status of the organs that they should now go under the category of me'ila. Rav Gidl says, "Zrikas pigel ena mevil de me'ila by kachim kalim, ve'ena meitzia midei me'ila, and it doesn't take it out of me'ila by the flesh by kachim the animals that are of greater holiness. Those the laws of me'ila already apply beforehand because they're extra holy, and after the zrika, then you're able to now eat the flesh." Right, eat the meat, and so it goes out of the laws of Mila. But over here, Rav Gidl says, in the name of Rav, that a zrika of pigel doesn't take this one in, doesn't take that one out, because it has the problem. It's pigel. That's the case. We're asking, so how, according to Rabbi Akiva, does it become pigel if the effectiveness of the making it holy is the zrika, but the zrika itself is pigel. We said that a zrika of pigel isn't effective. If the zrika is what's causing it to be holy, and now a zrika of pigel, which isn't effective according to Rav Gidl Amarav. So if I would say that there's two steps here, there's a shechita and then there's a zrika, so we'd say it's already effective by the shechita that it was already holy, and now the zrika makes it pigel, and then we could have explained it. But then I would have to say that Rabbi Akiva is following Rabbi, who says that the shechita is effective. But the way we're explaining it now, according to Rav Papa, we're explaining the way of saying that Rabbi Akiva is following Rabbi. That would be the way Rav Sheshes explained it, which ultimately would tell me that the limbs are, that the flesh and the meat and the bread and the meat have become like one unit. But over here, we're not saying that the bread and meat become one unit. We're just saying that it's the zrika, and therefore when it left, it was allowed to leave, right? That's the way we're explaining it now in Rav Papa. He says that, but we're asking, but you can't learn like Rav Papa because the whole Zrika over here was a Zrika of Pigel. It wouldn't, how could Rabbi Kiva say that the breads become Pigel if there was nothing that was making it holy beforehand? If you say that it was like Rav Sheshas, that the Shechita made it holy, then the Zrika could make it Pigel, even though the Zrika is Pigel, but that wouldn't, it was already holy. But if you say that the Zrika itself is making it holy and the Zrika is Pigel, it's not going to work. So let me just finish this. The Gemara says, Lavi Tusav Rav Gidla Marav. We rejected Rav Gidla Marav. So the whole kasha of Rav Papa falls off. No, I'm sorry. The kasha of Rav Papa comes back. This was a rejection of Rav Papa's kasha, that we had to answer it back like Rav Sheshas. Now we said, no, you don't have to answer like Rav Sheshas. You could still ask the kasha. It leaves us with a problem of we don't know according to which opinion Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak is asking this question. Sorry, that was a very complicated discussion who the question of Rav Shmuel Yitzchak is following, and then ultimately we end up with we don't have a source. We don't know.
Even by Kachin Kala, if it's not good because this Rico was not good, doesn't it still have like what was it, Kachin Damim?
Yeah, it's still Kedusha Dam. Very good. Yeah.
But that's not.
But that's not. That doesn't have the loss of Meila.
Yeah.
Example at the beginning, the shaitan like starts the process, and then the zikra is the one that completes it.
It actually doesn't though, because by the laws of Meila, the critical factor is the zrika, not the shechita. Doesn't do anything. There's nothing significant that switches in the loss of Meila by the shechita. If there was no Meila beforehand, there's still no Meila. If there was Meila beforehand, there still is Meila after the shechita. The critical point by Meila is the zrika. The zrika is what. Right? Now, then we were saying that if the zrika was invalid, then the zrika doesn't do that critical effect that it's supposed to do. If we're saying over here that the zrika is the critical effect, which is what Rabbi Elazar Bar Shimon holds, then we would say that the zrika of pickle wouldn't work. Yeah. Okay. New question. Rabbi Yirmiyah is a student of Reb Zera, so he likes to ask Reb Zera questions. It says, question that is Reb Yirmiyah is asking, Kivsei atzer sheshachtan l'shman v'avad alechem. Ma'ash yizrik damet shlei l'shman l'hater abasar b'achila. Can you do a little trick over here? What happened is the lambs were shechted properly. Then the bread got lost. Now, we learned before that if the breads are there at the time of the shechita, it becomes what's called zika, not zrika, but zika. It becomes an attachment. And then the breads will invalidate, the fact that there's no breads here, that would invalidate the lambs because everything becomes essential. The only thing is, there's one way out. Here, we lost the breads. We have a way out of resolving this. What we could do is, the rule is that if you have different thoughts by the zrika, then you can actually alter the status of the carbon, changing the carbon from kivsei atzeres to changing it into a shlamim. So is it possible that because we lost the breads, can we then adjust the next section of the carbon, the zrika, to make the animals at least eligible to be eaten by changing the carbon? Okay, we'll just change the carbon. We'll just have different thoughts of a different carbon. Amalei. So Reb Zera says to Reb Yirmiyah, he says, is it possible that something that if you do it properly, it's going to be invalid, but if you do it improperly, it's going to become valid? You're making improvements here by messing it up.
That's just to be eaten right and offered. Doesn't do anything.
It won't satisfy what we need to, but just
we did that yesterday. We made it like puzzle kind of, so the Luthor. I don't remember. We just
the Gemara is going to say, we have this. Gemara says, "V'loi." This is a surprise, a rhetorical question, like on a rhetorical question. it's like, is there such a thing where you mess it up and it gets better? It says v'loy, and is it not such a thing that you mess it up, it gets better? V'harei Pesach koydem chatzos. What about a carbon Pesach that's being slaughtered in the wrong time? Carbon Pesach is supposed to be slaughtered after chatzos. If you slaughter it before chatzos, it's pasul. Deina kosher l'shmai. If you slaughter it as a carbon Pesach, it's pasul. However, the kosher shalei l'shmai. But if you slaughter it for shlamim, then it's not a problem. It's kosher. So you see, when you mess it up, you do it for the wrong intention. It actually becomes better. It says, no, hachi kamina. I had a different point. My point was, Reb Zera's point, yesh l'cha davar shenira l'shmai v'nitchem l'shmai. Do you have anything that was actually already eligible? See, the carbon Pesach case, it was never eligible to be slaughtered. But here it was already eligible. And then you're messing it up now. So, ve'ina kasher l'shmai v'kasher l'shmai. And it was already eligible. And now, you don't do it for its eligibility. You do it for the one that's not eligible, and then you make it better. Is there ever such a thing? Where it says, sure, beloy, and you don't have such a thing, I'll show you one. For a Pesach, let's say a carbon Pesach, that it's already out after the time when you're supposed to slaughter. You have a window to slaughter the carbon Pesach on the 14th in the afternoon. Now it's already after that. And it wasn't brought. So it's already eligible. And so therefore now it should be possible if you bring it. But if you bring it for a different intention, it's going to be kosher. B'shaya Ma'aseh Shana, in other words, the rest of the year, it becomes kosher as a shlamim. The Gemara says, no, hachi kaminach. My Reb Zera comes back and says, no, I had a different intention. Yeshcha davar shenir l'shmai, v'nishchat l'shmai, v'nitchem l'shmai, v'einai kosher l'shmai, v'kosher l'shmai. Do you have anything that was eligible? And it was actually slaughtered eligible. And now it becomes a problem. And if you continue being eligible, then you mess it up. And if you do it in the wrong way, then you're going to make it better. Do you have an example of something like that? Which is exactly our case. So the Gemara says, V'lai. We do have examples. We have a taida. We had a case of the taida where the bread of the carbon taida broke after the shechita. So we said that he sprinkled the blood for the sake of a shlamim, not as a taida. Taida is a type of shlamim, but and then, even though the bread is invalid, but the animal is going to be kosher as a shlamim. Started off valid, perfect. Slaughtered valid. Bread breaks before the zrika. It invalidates it, but if you do it for a shlamim, it's going to be good. So we have a perfect examples. Where it says Shani Taida de Rachmana Karya Shlamim. Over there, you're not really messing it up because it was originally called a Shlamim, and you always had that option of it being a Shlamim. So it's not considered Shalei L'Shmai. It's not considered that it was rejected. It's not considered that it was Nidcha from being. It's not considered rejected. Okay. So we had a question and we had an answer. Taner Rabbanan. Shachat Shnei Kvasim al Arba Chalis. If the two lambs were shechted, but instead of having 2 loaves of bread, you had 4 loaves of bread. It says, Taviu lechem tnufa shtayim. It says in the pasuk you're supposed to have 2 loaves of bread, but you had 4 loaves of bread there. Or it says, well, Moishech shtayim, you take 2 of them. Minifan, and you weigh 2 of the loaves, and you weigh them. Bashar ne'acholis bepidyon, and the other ones you just redeem. You redeem the other ones, and then you can eat them as well. Amru Rabbanan Kamei Rav Chisda. The sages said this in front of Rav Chisda. Who are we quoting over here? It's a brisa. They said, the like Rebbe. This is not going to fit with Rebbe. Rebbe's opinion we learned already. The Rebbe, if it would be Rebbe, Kivan Damar Shchita Mekadsha, since Rebbe already says that the Shchita consecrates the bread. So, Deparaklu Hecha. So then, when are you going to redeem the other loaves of bread? If you take the loaves of bread and you redeem and you take them out of the Azara, so then Kivan the Ksiv, and then you redeem it. Kivan the Ksiv, Lifnei Hashem, since they're supposed to be inside the courtyard, if Salahu B'Yaitse, they're going to be compulsory if you take it out. Igavoy, and if you redeem them inside the temple, well, in the Azara, Amayel Chul Azara, the moment you redeem them, they become chulin, and you can't have chulin in the Azara. Now, I just want to look up over here. They're explaining this because we learned in other places that we're allowed to bring in certain things to help eat the meat. That you spoke about mustard, bringing mustard in. There didn't seem to be a problem. So, maybe there's just extra bread in the Azara to go along with the meat. Who says this is a real problem? Let me just see.
The place where the redemption.
Yeah, if they do the redemption inside, so then it's going to be chulin. It's going to be mundane, and it's going to be immediately at the moment of the redemption. It's going to be mundane in the Azara. So Amalu Rav Chisda says it's not such a problem because the Yoilam Rebbe, really we can follow Rebbe that says the Shechita already made it holy. Uparakl Gavoy, and they redeem it inside. It's not considered that you brought the chulin into the Azara. It's just it's automatically chulin. It's not, you're not supposed to bring in chulin to Azara, but this just became chulin, so it's fine. You can take it out. Amalei Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi that this could be a problem, the way Rav Chisda is answering, because for Atani we have another brisa that says kashu paidan, when you redeem these breads, talking about the case for this 4, ein paidan mela bachutz, you have to redeem it outside the Azara, because if you would redeem it inside, it would be chulin ba'azara. So he responds, Ravashi responds to me, he says, yeah, but ha vadai Rabbi Elazar bar Shimoni, that's following Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, who held that the breads weren't consecrated anyway until the zrika. So you could still redeem it even after the shechita, just don't do the zrika yet. The Rebbe, it's impossible. It would already be possible if it was according to Rebbe, because when you take it outside, you would invalidate it, because the shechita already consecrated it. But according to Rabbi Elazar bar Shimon, you could take it out because there was no zrika yet, so it wasn't consecrated yet. You take it out, you redeem, and bring just 2 back in. Extra.
So they would still include it as part of the sacrifice.
They were consecrated together with the. Amlu Ravacha Brei Rabbi Ravashi. We could say that there's a kasha on Rabbi Yechanan. Yeah. It says over here, miha. It means at least, but it's supposed to say miha, which means from here. We have a statement, which is usually a statement of Amram, which is usually a machlaikas. Taida sheshacht al shmeinim chalas. The carbon taida, which is supposed to be brought with 40 chalas. It's a Thanksgiving offering. And it's brought, instead of 40 chalas, it's brought with 80 chalas. So Chizki Amar, Kachu Arba Mitech Shmeinim. Chizki says only 40 have become consecrated. The other 40 are not consecrated. Rabbi Yechanan like Kachu Arba Mitech Shmeinim, that even the 40 weren't consecrated because it wasn't designated. You didn't separate which 40 should be. So nothing becomes consecrated. It's everything is chulin. The question over here is, according to us, if you had 4 loaves instead of 2 loaves, we said that they all become holy after redeem it, and then we quoted a brisa. According to Rabbi Yechanan, we should say that none of them became holy. The so here also, Reb Zera says that there's a way of doing it. If you say 40 out of the 80 should be holy, then 40 out of the 80 become holy. So over here, the brisa was talking about where you said 2 out of the 4 become holy, and that's why 2 out of the 4 would be holy. And why do you have to redeem the other ones? I guess you have to redeem them because you don't know which 2. You have to redeem it because you're going to eat it, and not as maybe. Okay. Let's leave it over here. Rav Tatani, Rav Chanina Tirsa.
Just missing that, Rabbi.
It's a new name, and it's like right in the middle of the page.
So good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's...
Okay, thank you. Have a good Shabbos.
Have a good Shabbos,
Wood,
everyone.
they say the chatzah is like wood upon the altar.
Rabbi, I went over